Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. Well, in this video I want to do something a bit different. I want to share some of the lessons that I've learned along the spiritual path over the years which have helped me to live a fulfilling life. And specifically, I want to talk about how to live a life of higher purpose. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I would like to do is invite you to think of a time in your life when you were awestruck by the vastness and the beauty of nature. Perhaps you went on a hiking trip and you walked to the top of a mountain path, and then you looked out at the vast landscape below, the rolling valleys and mountains, and you were just blown away by it. Perhaps you went for a walk on the beach and you looked at the way that the ocean stretched out seemingly forever into the distance, and the way that the waves rolled on the shore, and you were struck by the beauty of that. Perhaps you saw a beautiful sunset over that shoreline. Or perhaps you went on a camping trip and you looked up at the night sky and you noticed how vast it is and how intricate it is, how many stars there are that you just can't see in the city because of how polluted it is. And being blown away again by the vastness and the beauty of nature. Well, if you have had such an experience, you will know how awesome it is. And you will know that if you had problems before you went to that trip to have that experience, personal problems, problems with relationships with other people, problems to do with work, etc., how quickly those problems seem to vanish in the face of this awesomeness that you're encountering. And the reason for that is because you're taking something very bad and very small, and you're comparing it to something very great and very good. And of course, if your mind, if your consciousness is going to choose something to focus on, it's going to prefer the great and the good. And even if you have something good in your own personal life, it's still small in comparison to that greatness, that awesome goodness. And so even then, you are drawn to marvel at this awesome goodness to the exclusion of all else. And it's because, unlike the good in your own life, this is something that transcends your personality, that transcends you as a person. It's something far beyond you, of which you are just a singular part. And that is why we are so awestruck. And that is why it is so impactful to have something so great that you can experience in your life. And of course, we have landscapes and environments as an example in the natural world of something awesome, something that is greater than us and exudes great beauty and great goodness and great truth. But we can also have a more abstract expression of that. So there can be great ideas which transcend the individual, which the individual can become completely dedicated to because of the greatness of purpose that those ideas will impart. For some people, it's a particular hobby that they enjoy doing, which many other people share in, which might have a history going back many years. It's something that they can dedicate their lives to, and it gives them a great sense of meaning doing that. And for some people, it's a political ideology. They see a cause, an injustice that needs to be stood up against, and they dedicate their lives to contributing to the effort to stand up against that injustice. Of course, this example of the political sphere is where that higher purpose can often go from something which entails good intentions to serving very, very evil ends, which is unfortunate. And it can lead to all kinds of prejudice and discrimination against people who do not share the values of the particular ideology, as we're all too familiar with in 2023. But it still serves as an example of the power of something greater than us, and the meaning and the purpose and the fulfillment that can be brought by dedicating ourselves to that. And you can see this expressed in history. There have been times when people have died for a cause because they have valued the cause more than they value their life itself. Now that's powerful. That is very powerful. Imagine how much meaning aligning with the right higher purpose must bring, and how much genuine fulfillment that must bring. And there's so much anxiety and depression in society today, and some of that is due to chemical imbalances in people's brains, but I believe that much of the problems that people face today in terms of their mental state would be solved quite easily and quite effectively if they just had something to live for and didn't have a sense of hopelessness and despair being stuck in unfavorable and repetitive personal circumstances. To live for a higher purpose, as I illustrated by talking about being in nature earlier today, even if you do have problems in life, it's very easy to face them. It's very easy to shrug them off if you're dedicating your life to something greater, or at least it becomes easier to do so. So that's good. We've got some examples of things greater than us that we can dedicate our lives to, but each one of them has its limitations, particularly talking about causes in the political sense. But there is a higher purpose, there is a type of higher purpose which spirituality teaches us about, which is the ultimate higher purpose. And if you live by that, then you will have a unshakable foundation to your life and an unshakable thing that you derive your sense of purpose from. And that is something that is extremely, extremely valuable. And the things quite often that you see spiritual traditions encouraging us to dedicate our lives to are things like virtues, staying calm instead of losing control of your emotions, or being moderate in partaking in the pleasures of life, or perhaps it can mean courage in the face of adversity, resilience in the face of adversity, discipline to stay at something for as long as it takes to succeed, being humble instead of having an overinflated view of your own importance and not being able to put aside your own opinions in favor of coming to an agreement with people. Humility teaches us how we can do that. Things such as integrity, being truthful and honest towards people. All of these things are virtues. And people such as Confucius, the various Roman and Greek philosophers, just many philosophers from around the world of the classical era, saw there being a great amount of merit in living by these virtues. And there's a few reasons why this is important, because if you live according to virtues, you are living according to a form of a higher principle, something that goes beyond you as a person, because when you act like that, you're acting in a way that not only takes into account what your own personal interests are, but it takes into account what is good for everybody in the society that you're living within. And so in this way, virtue kind of imitates the divine order on the scale of human society, because it is living from a place of understanding the whole instead of just dividing people up into individuals or identities or in-groups and out-groups. And it also is a type of action which, like the bliss of the absolute reality, is fulfilling in itself. If you do something virtuous, you're not doing it because you expect something in return, or because you're going to get money by doing it, or something like that. You're doing it just because it's the right thing to do. How do you even envisage something like that? Well, one very easy way to understand this, and an experience we've possibly all, or many of us have had at some point in our lives, is being in a committed relationship with somebody. Or perhaps being a parent. If you do something for somebody that you love and care about, there's another important virtue, love or compassion. Then if you do something for that person, then if you truly love them, you're not doing it because you expect whatever you're doing to be reciprocated in some way. You're doing it just because you love the person. The love is the justification. And if somebody's in a relationship and they do something for a person, representing that they're doing so out of love, and then later on there's an argument and they use that thing that they did as leverage over the other person to say, well, I did this for you, you should do this, then that can really destroy a relationship, because what it's revealing is that the person wasn't truly acting from a place of love, because they weren't doing that thing for the sake of love. It suggests that rather they were doing it only because they expected something in return. So the end was not love, the end was personal gain. And that can be a really toxic thing in relationships, but it demonstrates the difference between doing something because you believe in the higher virtue, and doing something for selfish reasons. And in fact, that's a reason why so many relationships break down in today's modern age, because many people don't truly understand the virtue of love. They're only acting selfishly. But to understand, it's important to understand this distinction, because then we can grasp the essence of a virtuous action. And so it's a cyclical kind of logic, and it's a kind of transcendent logic, because transcending the world, because every justification that we have of the things of the world is what we can get out of it, or what tangible outcome there's going to be. But when it comes to virtue, the outcome is not important. The expression of that virtue is the outcome. And so it will never fail us, unless of course we fail to uphold the virtue. And of course this all points us towards the absolute reality, towards God, if you want to call it that, or simply the divine, living in a way which acknowledges the greater reality, the greater interconnectedness, and the greater sense of compassion that is represented by that idea of the divine. And that is truly the highest of all purposes. In the yogic tradition, this kind of way of living is spoken about extensively in the writings on karma yoga. So the whole basis of karma yoga, it's one of the four great yogas, and it's the yoga of good works. And the way that karma yoga is practiced is by doing things in the world, working in the world, but rejecting the fruits of one's actions. Now, what does that mean exactly? It's not what it might seem at face value when you talk about fruitless action. It's not going to your job and not accepting your pay for that. But it might be going to a job and accepting your pay and then thinking wisely about what you want to do with your life, how you want to live your life, and that will affect how you spend that money. And if you live in order to embody higher principles, such as the virtues that I described, or even aspiring towards the divine itself, then that is putting the resources of your life towards something where you're not going to necessarily get anything back in the worldly sense, but you will get something even greater back in what you get back spiritually, in terms of the spiritual development that you will achieve. And that is what is called fruitless action in karma yoga. There's really two types. There's forms of action which are good in themselves and therefore bear no fruit because they are their own end, such as the virtuous actions that I described earlier. But it's also ordinary worldly actions, but dedicated to a higher purpose and ultimately dedicated to the divine, as I explained in my previous example. And it's described as fruitless because it doesn't generate karma. And in this way, we can stop generating new karma, and then that gives us a chance to stop karma in its tracks, and then all we need to do is address the karma of our past, and we can eliminate the karma in our lives and escape the world of karma and become fully unimpeded by the obstacles of the world and just abide in the divine and be free. But Westerners tend to misunderstand the concept of karma. They think that karma is like a reward and punishment system, like there's a judge sitting up on a cloud who sort of puts a cross next to your name every time you do a bad thing, and then supernaturally sends some event to punish you for doing the bad thing, and then that's karma. This is a misconception that comes from our Christian past, but the true nature of karma is nowhere near as superstitious as that. It's much more to do with simple cause and effect. If you do certain things, certain results will follow, and if you become attached to the result of something, then you're going to be dependent on the whole system of karma for your existence. You're never going to be free because you're always going to be looking outside of yourself for fulfillment, and you're always going to be reacting to the circumstances of your environment. Whereas if you live according to higher principles, you're just living according to your own internal values, and that will determine how you behave. And it's not out of a seeking after anything. It's after a higher understanding of the good. And to live in that way, it's the most beautiful way to live, and it's the most fulfilling way to live. And that is what living with a higher purpose can do for your life. It's not just good because this or that good book from this particular culture says it is. It really does enrich your life, and it takes away so much of the source of anxiety that comes with living a purposeless life, or living a life where we search for a sense of purpose in the wrong thing, whether that's a relationship or an ideology or consumerism or whatever it might be. Living a virtuous life, living a life of spiritual contemplation and spiritual seeking is far superior to that. And it's a gift to be able to live that kind of a life. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you enjoyed that video. I hope you learned something about virtue and even the basics of karma yoga. And if you have any of your own comments on this content, please leave them down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to support my work so that I can keep sharing content like this to the greatest number of people possible. But anyway, thanks again for listening this time around, and I'll see you the next time.